Today, friends, we're going to make a 3D printable 4-inch grate using Tinkercad. So let's get cracking. All right, everybody, so here's the issue. Critters could get up in this area. So I am going to create a grate that keeps it locked. Now, of course, step one is to measure it. This is upside down and hard to see. So I'm just going to show you. It's 4 inches. All right, so we've got that measurement. I always work in metrics, but because this thing is actually 4 inches, we are going to work in inches. Of course, if you've got a caliper, you could actually switch it to inches as well. You could measure the inside if you wanted to build it there. Notice it's 3.52. If we go to the outside measurements, bingo, we get that same 4 or 3.98, depending on how accurate it is. Now my goal is to make this a tiny bit loose so it just slides on, and then I'm going to have a couple of screws so we can set it in place. So if this is your first time visiting Tinkercad, you can get there at tinkercad.com. I like to choose Sign In with Google. This is the basic workspace. These are our 3D designs. They are all stored on the cloud, and they are all private until you choose to make them public. Over here is the Create button, and today we are going to create a brand new 3D design. I like to start by naming projects. This is going to be called 4-inch grate. You can, of course, put whatever name you want. Once you click down there, you can click back to the Tinkercad dashboard, and this is how your project is immediately saved. As you can see, after a moment, the projects get a little image so you can see what they are. Right now, I'm going to click on Tinker This to return to the project. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is that Tinkercad normally works in millimeters, so do 3D printers, so I love millimeters. But for this project, just because that part was in inches, I'm going to switch to Imperial, and I'm going to use inches. I'm also going to use a scale of 1:1 because that will fit in this work area. Notice it is almost 8 inches, so that way it's easy to do my project, which was 4 inches. I'm going to click out here to back out. We're going to start this project with a fantastic part called the tube. When we bring this out, notice I set it at center. I was just watching that little line right there. It is not essential to do that, but it does kind of look nice as you build. Now we're going to change measurements over here with the radius. Now remember, our project was 4 inches. So I could type 2 and get exactly 4 inches. Notice if we click this, it'll show us that 4-inch measurement, but I want it to be a little larger because that was the outside measurement, and I need these walls to have some thickness. So I'm going to type 2.125. Notice that gives me a 4 1/4 measurement. If you simply double the math, that's how much that equals. Now to make the fit more like I want, instead of 0.125, I'm going to do 0.12. So that makes it a little thinner. So I do believe it's going to be outside it just a little bit. I'm going to bump the sides up to 128 so the part is more smooth. Lastly, I'm going to skip the bevel. I will show you the bevel. If we do 2, notice it rounds it. If we change this to 10, notice it only rounds the upper parts. I don't want that, so I'm going to just leave it at 0. That's how I want to build this part. I'm also going to take the height, and I'm going to raise it up to 3/4 of an inch. Notice you can do that with this 1/8 nudge super simply. Now let's move on to the Honeycomb Grid. This is my favorite part. We're going to search for the grids. If you type grid and press enter, there are several to pick from. You can play with all the different ones. I'm going to play with the Honeycomb Grid. When I bring it out here, of course, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a hole. I'm going to keep this radius of 0.197. I think that looks pretty awesome. I'm going to just quickly change this to 12 by 12. So that way we're sure that it'll cover the entire part. I am going to make this gap more. You'll notice that this would not be a very thick wall for the part that we're going to do. I'm going to change it to 0.1 so there's more space in between it. Notice that version looks a little bit jacked up. I'm going to simply type this again, 0.1, and press enter. That's the one that I wanted to have. It'll look even more clear if I switch to a flat view and a top view. So now we've got an excellent view of how that honeycomb grid is. Now we need to cut it out of another part. That is simply going to be a cylinder. we're going to bring that cylinder out. I'm going to leave the sides at 48 because it's going to be inside the shape. And I'm simply going to shift stretch this, but instead of 4 inches, I want 4 1/8. You do want to note that it is 4 1/8 inches high. I instead want to make that 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to type 0.125 and press enter. Now we're going to use the awesome lock feature. I want to make sure that I've got the orange tube. Note it says tube, and I'm going to lock it. Then I'm going to grab all the parts, choose L to align. I'm going to make that tube the boss. Click center and center so that it's all aligned. Now this is what's so amazing. When I do Control G to group this, the locked part does not get grouped. I'm going to turn the perspective back on so that you can see it. And all of a sudden, we have got a fantastic honeycomb grid that we can use for our part. Now, do notice there is one little artifact here. We are going to get rid of that by simply bringing out a whole cylinder. I'm going to shrink it down to a small size. And let's move it into place. Get it aligned with our nudge. Notice this is where we can change the nudge to smaller numbers. I'm going to go to 1/64. Now I am sure I am cutting that part out. And once again, I'm going to select the 2 shapes and do Control G to group. All right, so I have found that the holes I want in this, I'm going to do 1/8 inch holes. I'm going to bring out a cylinder hole, and these 1/8 inch holes actually work with 3mm machine threads that we use for 3D printing. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm just going to shift stretch it in. And of course, I'm going to type 0.125 to get that 1/8 measurement we want. Of course, I'll make it a little bit longer. All right, so to line this up, of course, I need to rotate it 90 degrees. Don't forget when you rotate, if you stay inside the blue circle, it's 22.5 degrees per click. Of course, if you hold down Shift, it is 45 degrees per click. Let's line this guy up. I'm going to do Shift Select and L. Click on this one to make it the boss, and I want to line it up this way. I'm also going to line it up with the top, and then I'm going to nudge it down, but I'm going to switch to the 1/4 inch nub. That way I only have to click one time to nudge it down 1/4 of the way. I can also use the arrow keys to move it so that I'm sure it's cutting. Notice it's on both sides. I also want this on this side, so I'm going to do Control D and nudge it over there as well. Now, since I've got those both selected, I want to let you know I've clicked somewhere else to cancel that duplicate. And then if we Shift Select these two and do Control D, we can rotate those 90 degrees, and bingo, we have got matching pegs on every side. With them all aligned, let's unlock this shape. I'm going to look at it from the left. I'm not going to grab the grate down below. As a matter of fact, I'm even going to hide it so I cannot select it. Let's grab all of those and do Control G to group. Bingo, the holes are cut. Now we can show the shape. I'm going to grab it all, and let's do Export. I'm only going to do the selected 2 shapes, STL. I'm going to put it in my 3D modeling folder, and I'm going to call it 4-inch grate, and hit save. Of course, now let's bounce to Bambu Lab Studio, hit create, brand new 3D project. I'm going to be using the Bambu Labs P1S. I'm going to print this in draft because I really do not need a high quality print. I just want it to last a while. Let's hit add, find our part. I'm going to pick a color. I'm going to change mine to a generic PLA for this print. Let's slice the plate. Check it out. It's going to take 1 hour and 5 minutes. Let's hit print. And of course, send it to the 3D printer. After a moment, of course, it bounces to the device menu. If you want to explore different materials like PETG to see if it'll last longer, you can. And of course, I'd love to hear the results you have with yours. And of course, once that downloading completes, we can hit play and monitor everything from afar. And after 1 hour of printing, check it out. Awesome honeycomb grid. We've got the screws ready that actually fit that Imperial measurement perfect. This slides on so nice and snug. We technically probably do not have to tighten it on, but I've got these screws, so we're going to just lock it in place. How cool is that? Just a few minutes of designing in Tinkercad, and bingo, problem solved. Friends, once again, simple steps to build with Tinkercad. Of course, if you're just starting, I will have a playlist up above of great lessons for beginners. I do also want to say thank you very much to everybody that's supporting me via YouTube memberships. Don't forget there are 3 different levels of support as low as $5. And of course, with any level of support, you get early access to videos. Also, a huge shout out to everybody supporting me via Patreon. Love how that group is growing. Of course, you can learn more with the bit.ly up above or the link in the description. Finally, friends, I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget, every time you hit that like button, share a video, add a comment down below, or click subscribe, you're helping HLModTech get just a little bit bigger, which absolutely makes my day. Friends, have a glorious day and keep tinkering.